Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. This is Midge Noble, and I am your host, and also the author of Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story. You can find that memoir at my website, gaywithgod.com, and if you order from there, you can get a signed copy. If not, you can order wherever you get your books. So this morning, I am touched by a post that I saw from Mission of St. Clair, the daily prayer and meditation on Facebook. And Bishop Stephen Charleston, who also wrote the book Bishop of Mars, which was quite interesting, he does this post every once in a while, and it's just so heartwarming. So today, his post was, "Be at peace, my good friend, for there is nothing your worries can do but make you tired. What will be, shaped by currents deeper and stronger than we can swim against. Instead of flailing in time, let us trust in what is without time. The steadfast presence of the sacred in the midst of our struggle. That is our lifeline. Trust in a power unseen, but felt to the marrow of the soul. Hold on to that firm hand and be at peace as it takes you to calmer water." I just love that. I love that because it's exactly where I am at this moment, feeling like I'm kind of flailing in between all the news bites and all the sound bites and all the this and the that. And sometimes, even though I know that God is in control, I don't always, might I say the word trust, that it's going to work out in our favor, because I know that God is ultimately in control of the end times. I know that God is in control of when Jesus returns. I know all of those things that you read in the Bible or you learned in Sunday school. However, in the current moment, the anxiety or the strife that we feel from the day to day clouds my memory of that it doesn't get us anywhere. In the long term, worry is really just an inside struggle because it doesn't fix anything to worry about our lives. How many of us worried about coming out and we thought how bad it was going to be and it was just going to be awful? And for some of us, it was. There were awful times, and there were still very, very awful times for many of us. So I get that the worry is sometimes connected to an outcome, but sometimes it's just within our own head. We worry, and something doesn't ever come to pass, or we worry, and it doesn't go as badly as we thought, or it turns out really super great. So when Bishop Charleston said, instead of flailing in time, let us trust in what is without time. So when I used to tell kids that when they did something really bad at school or something happened in school, and in their mind, their life was over, and that this was the worst thing that had ever happened, and it was the worst thing about their whole entire day. And it might have been the worst thing in their whole entire day, but of course their life was not over. And I would pull out a piece of paper, and I would put the paper on the table, and I'd say, let's pretend this is your whole entire day. And I said, and this dot, and I would put a dot on the page, represents what you just did today that you're so upset about. And I said, but look at what else is on this page. And they said, nothing. I said, exactly, except for there is. I said, and we would go through their day and talk about different events, and I would put different colors on the page. And that black dot was only one thing on the page that was something that was really horrible. Now, for some kids, I know that they would draw the dot as big as the whole page. But often they could look at that visually and see that, oh, in the scope of things, really, that's one thing. Now, yes, we are bombarded right now with many, many things that are getting on our pages, right? And yet, a lot of those things never come to pass. There's a lot of bluster, there's a lot of promising, and then things don't always happen. So we need to remember that even though things are going wrong in the world today, and massively wrong, I'm right there with you, massively wrong, some of the things that we worry the most about haven't yet happened. And I keep reminding myself that this is time sensitive because it may happen. They may take away our marriage rights. They may do this and they may do that. And then what happens? The next person comes into office and they take that back. And they re-give all the things back. It's sort of like, when people went to prison, but then they got a pardon and they got to come out and it's like they never did anything, but yet they're back in jail because they've reoffended or whatever. But, it has always been this seesaw of, oh, I'm in control, and then no, you're not, and yes, you are, and then no, you're not. And so we do have a history to rely on that says a couple of things. One, when we trust, and if you look at the word trust, the word us is in that word. And I think that's brilliant. I think that's just brilliant because it is a cooperation. Trust doesn't happen just one-sided, or it's going to blow up. So if you only trust this one person and yet that person doesn't trust you, or they do something wrong, then it's not a cooperation. But trust really does take two people. You have to give that back and forth to each other. So when we trust in the God of our understanding for any events in our lives, it could be, who we're going to marry, or what job we're going to take, or, what kind of place we want to live and where we want to live. All of those things in combination of trusting the God of our understanding to give us guidance, to hold us in the dark times, to be there for us. That is a cooperation. So not only is God standing by, we need to be standing by and taking God's lessons into our hearts and souls to get through these tough times. When I think back at the Exodus and how thankful they were in the beginning that they were able to leave, and sure they were scared, and I'm sure they were worried, and yet they found themselves in a position where they had to follow Moses because there were no other options other than probably death. And so they followed Moses. And then what did they do after they were given the miracle of going through the Red Sea and having it parted, and that they got through and the other people didn't? And it was like, oh, we are being protected. And they followed that up about grumbling about every other little thing and whining and thinking that God wasn't there to protect them anymore. And I was like, as I read that, I mean, I understand you want water and you want food, but there is a way to have a want and a desire and still be able to trust. And I find myself being probably one of the ones that was whining because I want this whole thing to be over so much. I want to be able to look at our country again and be proud. I want to look at I say that. I was always proud until I learned more. The things that I didn't learn in school, the things that we all now know, that there was never a time really to be proud of the United States and how we treated people. However, in the good times, there were things to be proud of. And I would like to get back to that time where I feel like if I say I'm from the United States, I don't have to apologize, or, I just don't feel the pride that I would want to feel in my own country because of who's leading it and the damage he's doing. Not that I'm not proud of all of the great things that we're doing in this country, and that's the thing that we need to highlight. There are people that are giving food to people. There are people who are giving assistance to people. There are people who are fighting for the rights of those who are marginalized. And all of the marches and the No Kings and the this and the that, we're showing up. We are showing up by either donating to those causes or actually putting your boots on the ground and marching, doing legislation. I'm so proud of those people who live in this country, who are still trying to bring this country back to what we need to be. And I think that trust in each other is beautiful, that we can trust each other to fight for us. And yet, I do believe that how we bring our faith into that is a personal journey that can affect the energy that goes forward into all of these protests and all of this legislation. By doing the things that we can do, it opens up that portal of trust that the God of our understanding is still present and will not leave us, even in the dark times. That doesn't mean that God's going to come down and smite the squatter in the White House. That doesn't mean that God is going to put everything right. I still think that's our job. But God's presence, not to worry, because God is still present. And to hold on to God doesn't mean that God's going to fix it. It means that you just hold on to the God of your understanding and be at peace to know that calmer waters are coming. I saw someone talk about that on it's a show on that I don't think it's on anymore, but it was called Roots. And this one woman was going through her genealogy and learning all these things. And she was so faithful about it. And she said, there are always dark times. And yet we make it through because we're supposed to. And I thought, wow. The African American people had so much pain put upon them and so much degradation and were brought here illegally, and yet they still understand the journey. They still understand that the God of their understanding is bringing them through generation after generation after generation, and there is no quit in them. There is no quit. They will continue to strive and be a positive presence in our world because they know that the deeper faith is what brought them forward. And they've never given that up. And so I'm inspired not only by Bishop Charleston this morning, I am inspired by all marginalized people who have continued to go forward and not give up or give in and let their hearts guide them. We as people of faith and we as a marginalized community have always been. We have always been, and we will always continue to be. They can mess with our rights, they can mess with us, and yet we won't go anywhere. We didn't go anywhere when Stonewall happened. We didn't go anywhere before that. There is lots of history with our LGBTQ plus community where we have continued to be pushed down and our rights have continued to be blocked or taken away, and we continue to work because there is no other option. We either give in or we keep fighting. And that's who we are as a people. That's how we are as people of faith. And it doesn't matter what other people think about our personal journeys because that's not up to them. They look at us as just a big collective, and yet we are individual members of this collective. Some of us believe in God, some of us don't. Some of us believe in formal worship, and some of us don't. And I can tell you that it really, I don't think, matters to God so much whether you go to church or not. I just believe that it matters that we are faithful and that we are holding that inside of our souls and that we worship however is right for us. It's sort of like how if you went to camp when you were a kid, some kind of Bible camp or some kind of faith camp, and you were so connected to God because that whole camp was centered around being in God's presence and doing all the things that you do to keep yourself connected. And connection has to do a lot with, reading, meditating, being surrounded by other like-minded people. And then you come off that mountain experience or wherever you went to camp and you come into real life and everything starts hitting one thing after another. This goes wrong, this has to be dealt with, da 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 da. And I even find that going from our cabin back to our home where we live, because at the cabin, it is just sacred and peaceful. Now, there are trials there. Of course, if you're breathing, you have trials, and there are trials, but there is so much less distraction that I always feel so connected, to my sacred self. And then I come back and, there's chaos in the neighborhood and there's all this and there's all that to deal with. And I've noticed that, it is a choice that you can bring that sacred with you, but you can also lose it quickly when you lose focus. And focus is the point. If you keep your focus on your sacred self, with the breath you breathe, with the thoughts you think, with the things you say, that keeps you connected to the God of your understanding. And that's a hard thing to do. And yet when we do it, it just flows so much easier. And it goes back to Bishop Charleston's post this morning when he said, hold on to that firm hand and be at peace as it takes you to calmer water. And that means that every step you take in life, that's your calmer water if you are able to stay connected to the God of your understanding. So for me and for you today, I hope that we will take a moment to really just sit with that. And I'm going to post the link to how you can see that quote from Bishop Charleston, and you can use it as your own mantra for the day and the days after, because we're not done yet with the strife and with the struggle, but we can be at peace and we can take the worries that we have and put them into the calm water and know that we will do whatever we can to make it right. And that is all that is expected of us, is to show up every single day, walking the talk and walking the walk that Jesus had put before us. The greatest commandment is to love yourself and to love others. And when we take our faith in the God of our understanding and we do loving things for ourselves and for each other, we have already done what was expected of us. So step into that every single day. Remember that you are worthy, you are sacred to the God of your understanding, and we can make a difference. Thank you, everybody, for all that you do, subscribing and sharing and leaving comments. I appreciate you guys so very much. And remember to go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com and look for that link to connect with the posts on Facebook, if you're still on Facebook, with Bishop Stephen Charleston. Check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly group entitled My Faith Journey. If you need support to help you through your coming out and or faith journey, go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, and see how you can connect with me. I offer a free confidential session to get to know each other and to see if what you need is something I can offer you through ongoing coaching sessions. If you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, are not even sure if you are gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.